To fly in a B-25, Mitchell wasn't just danger, it was terror. Crews endured deafening engine noise, bone-shaking vibration, and missions that skimmed just feet above enemy guns. The Doolittle heroes made history, but what most never heard is how every low-level run became a fight to survive the machine itself, before crews ever faced enemy fire. Inside, things got even worse. Inside a B-25, the roar of the twin Wright Cyclone engines never lets up. 110 decibels in cruise made the cockpit louder than a jackhammer, hour after hour. On takeoff or during an attack run, the noise spiked even higher. Every surface trembled with vibration, a relentless shaking in the 20 to 60 hertz range that made hands go numb and teeth chatter. Crewmen described the sensation as fighting the airplane itself, bones rattling, vision blurred, eardrums throbbing. Communication became a daily struggle. The intercom, meant to keep 6 men connected, was often drowned out by the engine's bellow. Pilots and gunners screamed into their throat mics, but even then orders were garbled or lost. More than one attack was botched, because a single word got buried in the noise. Crews improvised, tapping shoulders or flashing hand signals to pass commands down the line. In emergencies, a missed call could mean the difference between hitting the target and flying straight into disaster. The cockpit's thin insulation offered little relief. Some mechanics stuffed spare blankets, rubber mats, or even parachute silk around the bulkheads, hoping to muffle the worst of the sound. It barely helped. After hours in the air, men staggered out with headaches, ringing ears, and a fatigue that sank deep into their bones. Many returned from war with permanent hearing loss. The B-25's violence wasn't just from enemy guns. It started with the machine itself, turning every mission into a test of endurance before the first shot was ever fired. B-25 crews learned to fly closer to the surface than most pilots ever dared. Skip bombing called for a run-in at 200 to 250 feet. Engines roaring, airspeed locked at 230 miles per hour. At 600 yards from a target ship, the lead pilot would drop even lower, sometimes to just 10 or 15 feet above the water. Waves blurred beneath the nose as the bombardier counted down the distance, eyes fixed on the enemy vessel. At 300 yards, the bomb release went live. The 500-pound bombs, fitted with 4 or 5 second-tail fuses, tumbled free, skipping across the water like stones. If the aim was true, the bomb would smash into the hull or detonate just beneath, sending shockwaves through steel and crew alike. Training meant endless hours over practice ranges, usually against derelict hulks or painted outlines on sandbars. Pilots drilled on formation discipline, holding their line as they dropped to mast height, while gunners practiced laying down suppressive fire during the final approach. One misjudged move, a wing dipped too low, a wave cresting higher than expected, could flip a B-25 into the surf in seconds. The presence of enemy fire only sharpened the danger. The tactics evolved fast. Major Paul Pappy-Gunn, frustrated by the limits of factory designs, began fitting B-25s with up to 8 forward-firing 50-caliber machine guns in the nose. Now, crews could strafe decks as they closed in, blasting away at gun crews and clearing a path for the bombs. These gunship conversions turned the B-25 into a flying battering ram, but every pass demanded perfect timing and nerves. Even seasoned flight leaders admitted that the margin for error at wavetop level was measured in heartbeats. Incoming fire was a constant living threat for every B-25 crew. As they roared in at wavetop height, The first barrier was a wall of small caliber bullets, 13mm machine guns and even rifle fire, spraying from ships and shorelines. These rounds ripped into thin aluminum, shattering plexiglass and ricocheting through the fuselage. At the heart of every attack run, heavier weapons waited. The crack and boom of 25mm and 88mm anti-aircraft guns sent shrapnel slicing through the air, each shell capable of tearing a wing from the aircraft or igniting a fuel tank. Every second over enemy territory meant dodging this invisible storm. Tail and top turret gunners scanned the sky, eyes straining for the flash of a Zero or the glint of a German fighter rolling in from above or behind. Enemy pilots attacked from all angles, head-on, from the belly, or in a steep dive, forcing gunners to swing their 50 caliber guns in desperate arcs, trying to lay down a curtain of fire. There was no safe direction. The only escape was speed, altitude, and hope that luck would hold for one more pass. The B-25's design put every crewman in harm's way, each position facing its own kind of terror. Up front, the bombardier lay in the glass nose with just a thin sheet of plexiglass and aluminum between him and the world outside. With the ground or ocean rushing past at 200 miles per hour, there was nowhere to hide from gunfire or shrapnel. Crewmen in the nose described the sensation as being trapped in a fishbowl, every vibration magnified, eyes straining for the target while flak bursts stitched the sky ahead. Behind the cockpit, waist gunners braced themselves at open windows, exposed to slipstream winds that could freeze skin even in the tropics. Their job was to watch both sides for enemy fighters, swinging heavy 50 caliber guns in tight quarters, knowing a single tracer could ignite the oxygen bottles at their feet. The tail gunner worked alone in a narrow compartment barely big enough to turn around. Attacks from behind came with little warning, just the flash of cannon fire before bullets punched through the thin skin of the fuselage. Escape routes were cramped and awkward, sometimes blocked by twisted metal or jammed hatches. In these stations, survival depended on instinct, luck, and the hope that the next burst would not find its mark. A B-25 hit at wave-top height gave its crew less than 3 seconds to react. At 200 miles per hour and just 100 feet above the water, even a perfect response left no margin for error. Parachutes needed at least 500 feet to open. Anything less and a jump was a death sentence. In the chaos of battle, wounded men struggled with jammed hatches and tangled gear. Crew drills told them to bail out, but physics and fate rarely gave them the chance. The crash of Ruthless Ruth in August 1944 drove this reality home. During a skip bombing run off New Guinea, anti-aircraft fire tore through her left engine and fuel tanks. Flames raced down the wing as the pilot shouted for the crew to get out. The radio operator hammered out an SOS, his hands slick with sweat and blood. There was no time for an orderly escape, no time for anything but instinct. The pilot ditched the B-25 on a coral shelf, the impact ripping the fuselage apart. Only 2 crewmen made it out alive, clinging to debris, until rescue. For the rest, the bailout window had slammed shut before it even opened. Loss rates were plain for B-25 crews to see. In some Pacific campaigns, up to 1 in 5 aircraft failed to return from a single mission. A tour of duty could mean flying 30, 40, even 50 sorties before a crew was rotated home, if they lasted that long. Each time a Mitchell lined up for takeoff, the odds weighed heavy. With a 20% loss rate, a crew's chance of surviving an entire tour dropped fast. Mission rosters filled with names crossed out, replaced by new faces just as quickly. These were not distant numbers. They were the daily reality for men who watched empty bunks and knew exactly what it meant. Every briefing, every launch, the math was simple and brutal. Survival was never guaranteed. Fatigue crept in long before the mission count hit 50. Medical memos from 1944 described B-25 crews showing signs of combat exhaustion after only 20 flights. Insomnia, trembling hands, sudden bursts of anger. Some men were barely out of their teens. The average age hovered in the early 20s, with pilots and gunners often younger than the aircraft they flew. Operational exhaustion was documented by Army Air Forces studies, leading to early groundings and heated debates about how many missions a crew could take. Only about 20 of nearly 10,000 Mitchells built still fly today. Around 100 are preserved in museums, each aircraft a silent witness to what these young crews endured. Invisible scars remain. The metal shells on display are more than relics. They are reminders of the noise, the danger, and the relentless fear that numbers alone cannot reveal. Today, fewer than 25 B-25s remain airworthy, a stark contrast to the thousands once flown. As living memory fades, the terror and courage of these crews risk becoming statistics. Their ordeal reminds us the true cost of conflict endures long after the last mission lands.